Hey everybody, welcome back to the second video here of our biome series. Thanks for tuning back in. Like I said, we're going to be having a 3 video series, 2 specific biomes in each video. So as I promised last time, we'll be going over deserts and grasslands. So if you needed any extra information or you were interested in what these biomes are like, come along. We're going to hop right into it. Okay, so we're going to start with deserts first, and what deserts are going to occupy is going to be North Africa, southwestern United States, Mexico, a lot of Australia, southeast Oregon, where I actually had the pleasure of visiting, Nevada and Utah, same there, I've been there too, Western Asia, and they tend to be in lower latitudes, so that's something to take into account as well. So some of the most famous deserts that we do have on planet Earth are going to be the Sahara, Mojave, Gobi, Kalahari, the Great Basin, which is where I was, which is the High Plains Desert in southeast Oregon, northern Utah and Nevada, as well as the Arabian deserts, which are going to be across the pond to the Atlantic Ocean. So let's jump into right away a little bit of the climates and let you know what goes on here. So these are going to be vastly different than the last 2 biomes that we spoke of last time. So deserts are going to be pretty harsh, extremely harsh when it comes to weather and heat, very little rainfall. So that's going to classify deserts in a whole is usually the amount of rainfall that they have. They have on average less than 6 to 10 inches of rainfall per year, which is pretty similar to the tundra when you look at it with how much rainfall that they have. So it also does have cold versus hot deserts. So Antarctica is going to be the largest cold desert on the planet. So very little rainfall there, very little species of anything that lives there. There are penguins, so that's something to take into account. We do have some bases down there that do a lot of study with receding snow and ice and the ice sheets and the depths of the ice over the course of decades. So there's been a long history of humans there doing some studies. So another thing where the deserts are very specialized is comes into the plant life there, since there does have some very specific plants that are only found in the desert, and you probably know a few of them off your head before I even say anything, but cactuses are going to be one of the major plants that you see in the desert. You'll see a bunch of shrubs, sagebrush in the High Plains Desert where I was, and grasses too. So you're like, oh, how does something like that survive with very little rainfall? So cactuses are very specialized. They have very large root systems that expand out very, very wide around the cactus in diameter. They also do go down quite a ways. So once the desert does get a heavy rainfall, which doesn't happen all that often, but they can get a good downpour, cactuses will take advantage of that to the utmost. They can absorb up to, I don't know, gallons and gallons and gallons of water per rainfall. They can also store over 100 to 200 gallons of water within themselves. So that's what makes them very unique. So cactuses are also very thick and fleshy, which allows them to store water extremely well. The spines that they have are modified leaves, believe it or not. That helps deter animals from penetrating the cactus and trying to get any water that they can out of there, which they do. There's specialized birds that'll land on a cactus and poke holes in it and make a home. But also get the water out of there, since cactuses do store quite a bit in their leaves. Other well-known plants that you might have seen is Joshua trees. Very cool looking plant. They also have a national forest dedicated to them, Joshua Tree National Forest, or National Park I should say, which is a place that I've been willing to go, or wanting to go to, excuse me. California palm trees, sage, like I said before. Tree aloe is also very common to deserts, as well as my favorite, which is the agave plant, which is an ingredient in tequila. So there's that. We're going to make these videos a little bit quicker since my last one was a little long in my opinion. So we're going to fly through some of the animal species that do occupy here, but the animals that do live in the desert are very, very niche specific to not needing a lot of water. But then also they have the ability to let heat escape from their body rather quickly to cool off. So you're going to see some specialized animals such as fennec foxes and some species of bats, as well as elephants. And what you'll notice on them is they have very large ears. And so what that is to do is to lose heat, because especially with a fox, they're covered in fur, but that's how they let heat release from their body, and wind catches that and cools them off. Same with some bat species. Bats go off of sonar and echolocation. Big ears will help them navigate and find prey, but also in the desert environments helps them lose a little bit of heat. Same with elephants. You'll see them quite often dusting themselves, which will allow them to stay cool. But those large ears will help heat loss too. So that's something that animals in the desert have adapted to, is to lose heat. But something very special about deserts as well is that they can get so hot during the day, but they also get very cold at night. They don't have a lot of material for heat to hang on to. Not a lot of rocks there. Primarily it's sand, and sand loses heat rather quickly. So there's nothing for the heat to stay to, and you usually don't get a lot of cloud cover there to keep the heat in the area as well. So as soon as it comes down at night, when the sun goes down, it just dissipates and goes away. So when we were camping in the Great Basin and in southeast Oregon, it'd get up to 100 degrees during the day. So we would be out of the field by noon, and then we would go back out in the evening. But when we were camping in our tents, you actually had to bring a pretty thick sleeping bag to stay warm at night, because it would drop down into the 40s once the sun went away. But reptile species, they're going to take advantage of being up as soon as the sun is up, and they're basking, warming up their body heat since they're cold-blooded. And that's what we found out when we were in the Great Basin. We were chasing side blotch lizards. You'd find them out on tops of rocks, and we would catch them and utilize those for a study project. And in the early morning, they weren't very fast, but the longer they were out into the sun, they were rather hard to catch since they're so quick. But once the sun starts to go away, they start to go away too. And once the sun gets too hot, they don't like to stay out on the rocks. You'll see them pick up their feet like this every once in a while, just to regulate their body temperature so they don't get overheated. So with that said as well, there's a huge influx of species population in the desert. Like I said in my previous video, the tundra and the taiga, both of those had right around 1,000 species that occupied both of those biomes separately. But when it comes to the desert, you're going to be looking at about 6,000 species, and you're like, why would there be a lot of animals that occupy this area when there's not a lot of water and it's hot? There's a trade-off there. So they don't have to worry about the cold. That's a great trade-off. They just have to worry about finding food and water. So animals can tolerate that early in the morning and more in the evening. So that's a trade-off to a lot of those animals. You're going to find a lot of mammals. Here some special ones: jackrabbits, mountain lions, fennec fox, like I said before, armadillos, cheetahs, chipmunks, deer. And then once you get over into Africa, where there's the Sahara, you're going to find some sidewinder snakes and a lot of reptiles, but giraffes, kangaroos down in Australia, hyenas, zebras, and then also you might come across some African wild dogs and jackal too. So the mammals are there compared to the tundra and the taiga, even though those still had a fair share, you're going to find a great diversity, or a greater diversity here, as well as a lot of hawk species, owls, accipiters and bootios, ostrich, some cool species here too. But then we also have reptiles, bearded dragons, horned lizards, sidewatch lizards, like I mentioned before, that I actually had the opportunity to catch and release out there. A lot of rattlesnakes, came across a bunch of those too when we were out there. Sidewinders, king cobras, king snakes, maybe some tortoise, box turtle, tree frogs, bullfrogs, toads. The one thing that you're going to find more often here is there's more reptiles than amphibians, since amphibians do require their skin to be moist, and they do require more water than, say, a reptile would in that environment. So those are going to be the key things in the desert biomes. So like I said, I don't want to go in too much detail, but let's wrap this up super quick. Animals here have a trade-off compared to tundra and taiga. There's Joshua trees, high influx of species compared to the other two at about 6,000. Specialized animals here as well, with large ears for heat disbursement. So what we're going to do next is we're going to jump into the grasslands, and then what we'll do from there is make that video quick too, and then that way I can get into my last video, which is going to be the temperate and also the tropical rainforest. All right, now let's talk about grassland biome. So there's going to be two sections of the grasslands that do come into play here. We're going to have the savanna, which is going to be African, and then you're going to have temperate, which is going to be United States, and you're going to have some parts of Asia there too. But with the grasslands, the Great Plains here in the United States, a lot of history here. So we'll touch on that here in a little bit. But the velds of Africa, the pampas of South America, steppes of Eurasia, and the plains of North America are going to be the most targeted areas of plains where we'll have some information here for you today. Here can vary immensely with the change in seasons. So it can be as hot as 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer and as cold as negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter. So there's going to be a lot of animals here that are built to last for those temperature swings. Rainfall here comes in the early spring and early summers. What you'll see some in Africa is you'll see those huge migrations of animals that are going for the rainy seasons is what they call it. Average rainfall here does vary from about 10 to 35 to 36 inches per year. It's enough rain here to sustain grass. That's the main forage for a lot of these animals here is grasses. It's going to be the dominant foliage, but there's going to be a few trees here and there to help with those. Let's say giraffes. You'll see giraffes eating on trees too. The middle seasons here with the grasslands, primarily displayed in the African movements. You'll see animals travel great distances for water. Plants and grasses will grow quickly. And then you'll also have provide brand new fresh nutrients for a lot of these animals that do travel very far. So this is going to be dominated by grazing mammals. A lot of them are going to be megafauna. You probably heard that term megafauna back for the Ice Age days. About 11,700 years ago was when the Ice Age stopped, and you had a lot of those large mammals get wiped out, like woolly mammoths, woolly rhinos, etc. And we replaced them with elephants and rhinos that we have of today. So those are going to be the megafauna species that occupy that right now. So some history within with the grassland biomes started right here in the United States. In the 80s, there was a huge influx of human population that was going from east to west across the United States. And that impacted the American bison populations by quite a huge number. So there used to be an estimated amount of 60 million American bison roaming across the whole country, which is mind-boggling to think about. And believe that or not, that dwindled below 500 bison in the United States at one point, which is ridiculous to think about. You'll see these old pictures of settlers on top of bison skulls that look like miniature mountains of bones. But now in 2019, we do have around 500,000 bison in the United States on private and also free-ranging populations. So that's awesome. 1910 was when we first started to have conservation efforts to bring them back. The early 1800s was the start of the population being wiped out, and then we got 1905, the American Bison Society was founded. Theodore Roosevelt, president of ours, helped with that, so thanks, Teddy. So that's going to be the largest free-ranging mammal that the United States has to offer. It's going to be the American bison, but there's a lot of, like I said, this is dominated by grazing mammals. So we're going to have deer, elk, moose, things come into this to this biome as well. And so the size of these biomes, and they're dominated by grass, it's going to be very easy for these animals to thrive and sustain large populations. So Africa, now let's shoot over there. So they have large populations of grazing mammals as well, and the largest population that they have there is going to be the wildebeest population. You'll see migrations of them in the millions. Right now they have about a population of about 2 million as of right now, and they all travel for those rainy seasons for the new rich nutrient grasses that are starting to grow. There's also a lot of zebra and gazelle that are about in the 100 to 200,000 range that do travel as well with the wildebeest. They travel about 1,800 miles for the grasses from those fresh new rainfalls. Elephants, like I mentioned before in the desert biome video, there's about 40 to 50,000 left. They've taken a huge hit from poachers the past few decades, since they think that their tusks are very valuable in the black market, etc. Rhinos as well is another megafauna species that's taken a huge hit. There's less than 30,000 total rhinos left in the world. South Africa is probably doing the best right now at monitoring and keeping some populations stable. But also in Africa, you have other countries that are doing their best that they can to monitor their populations and keep poachers at bay. But it's just not working out in some of those countries. Poaching is the main reason for a lot of these megafauna species to get killed and wiped out. So deer, elk, moose, bears, tigers, cheetahs, lions, hyenas, giraffe, hippo, elephants, crocodiles, numerous and abundant snakes and reptiles, as well as numerous amounts of birds and raptor species occupy the grasslands. So like I said, this is going to be another wrapped up quickly video. I don't want to take up too much time in these, but I want to take up more time once it comes to more specific families of animals and animals in general, as well as some conservation topics. So I hope you like the little bit of information I had here for you regarding the grasslands. So we'll get into the next video here soon, which is going to be the rainforest video. So thanks for taking along today. I do appreciate it. Look for the next video coming up here very soon.